Assalamu alaikum ya halween. Today I'm going to be talking about something that's been on my mind a lot lately, which is death and funeral customs here in Jordan. Before moving to Jordan, I think that I had been to possibly 2 funerals in my life. But here in Jordan, that would be quite a shocking thing for people to hear because funerals are such a big part of the culture. So much so, and it's such an obligation upon Jordanians, that I found out that somebody made an app called Wafiyat, which is obituaries, so that people would never miss a funeral again. I don't know if people actually use this app or not, but I thought that it was kind of interesting. I went to my first Jordanian funeral about 2 months into living in Jordan, and that's when I realised what a massive, integral part of the culture funerals and death are. And I've wanted to cover this subject many times over the years, but one, it feels like quite a macabre thing to talk about, and as well, every time I wanted to make a video about funerals, somebody would die, and then I didn't feel like I could. I have actually recently lost somebody who's very close to me in the UK, and I think that he would actually appreciate this video, so that's why I'm making it today. So, death is all around. I find it really strange if I ever see my husband's Facebook feed and every other post is an announcement of death. It's a black background and there will be white Arabic script saying an Islamic verse. That will be the announcement of a death. It's everywhere and it's all the time. It's very different to my Facebook page, for example. And it's not just a private event. When somebody dies, anyone can come to the funeral. There's no invitations for it, to the extent where you will see there will be signs up on roundabouts, circles, handwritten signs saying that there's a death at this location, it's the death of this person, for anyone who might be driving past who didn't get an announcement on Facebook. Whereas in the UK, it's much more intimate, it's invite only, and it's very much about the immediate family. So yeah, I'd only been to a couple of funerals before I came here. And I don't know if that's a reflection of how small my circle is in the UK, or as well a reflection of how children are really shielded from funerals and from death in the UK. It can kind of, sometimes the word can kind of seem like a 4-letter word or something very taboo that you don't mention in front of kids. You want to kind of shield kids from those big feelings and big questions and things. And I don't know, it's just different here, where perhaps it's to do with faith being a strong part of people's lives. But it's handled very head on. You're not afraid to talk to your children about death, and I guess it makes it easier to explain death to a child when they have a concept of their faith. So, but either way, children are very much involved, to the point where when I have been to funerals, I have been surprised, and when I first came here, I was really shocked to see children involved directly, like in the same room as the body, and they're seeing the big emotions from the adults. They're seeing the women cry, and the men cry, and they're very much involved. They're not taken to a different room to give the adults space, or to protect them in any way. They're very much involved. And although I did find that really shocking in the beginning, because I'd just never seen it before, I also find it really refreshing. I think it's really good, and we're raising our kids to kind of really understand what death is, because I grew up absolutely petrified of death. It was the scariest thing ever. And I just don't see that in the same way here. But anyway, let's talk about the funeral. So, what happens when somebody dies? What will happen is the senior women in the family who are closest to the deceased, will prepare the body, which is very different to in the UK, where it's sent to a funeral house where professionals do that for a fee. Here, the family, the female family members do that. And I can't, I've never asked someone what that feels like or what that experience is like, but although it must be extremely difficult, I also think that probably, it helps you in accepting the death more. I don't know. So when the body has been prepared and everything is taken to the funeral home, where the women will come together and they will gather around the body and they will say prayers and they will cry and they will mourn in a very immediate, very upfront, raw way. And the kids are there with them. And then after a while, the men will come and they will take the body to be buried, and they will say their goodbyes at the burial site and say their prayers. And then the women will prepare the house where they have been for guests. So either they'll get chairs, you'll rent chairs to go around the rooms inside the house, or you will have Arabic mattresses on the floor, and huge saucepans of Arabic coffee are prepared, and the place will just smell so strongly of cardamom and all of these different spices and coffee and things. And then coffee will be served in thermos flasks to the guests in little cups. And the men will they will have a tent in the street, it will be close by, or maybe it will be in the family court or like the family hall, but it will be separated. So yeah, it's different in the sense that it's not invite only, it happens immediately. You don't waste time with the funeral preparations, you do them really, really quickly. The person dies and you get them into the ground as quickly as possible, and you get the people mourning as quickly as possible. Whereas in the UK, it can be very long periods of time between when the person dies and when they have their funeral, and they will be kept at the coroner's or at the funeral house until the time comes when the family can have the funeral. And here in Jordan, you don't do that. And I don't know if that's a religious thing or if that is a cultural thing to do with, the heat and things. So what I've been describing is Muslim funerals. To my knowledge, I have been to one Christian funeral, but just to where you greet the guests, where you sit in the room in chairs, and that was part of the church. So that was that was like a hall connected to the church, and that was mixed. But the men sat at one end and then the women sat at the other. But I don't think it's like a direct rule. I think that was just kind of like it happened naturally. But then the same thing, someone brought around coffee. So for Muslims in Jordan, the funeral period, the initial funeral period, will last 3 days. That's when the house will be open to receive guests, 2 or 3 days. And then there will be 40 days of mourning, and then sometimes that will be extended. Sometimes the family will decide that they're going to enter into a year of mourning, for example. And what that means is during that period, the immediate family members, they don't dance, they don't sing, they don't go to parties, and if they do, they don't partake in the festivities. Funerals, graduations, parties, anything like that are cancelled. So for instance, me and my husband, we got married during funeral period. We were in a year of mourning. So we didn't have a wedding. In the UK, we had a really strong tradition for that kind of thing before. It's very much associated with the Victorian period, with Queen Victoria, and wearing black and following a lot of social customs, but we don't tend to do that anymore, to the point where even you sometimes see people going to funerals not wearing black as well in the UK. So people do it much more on it's much less traditional, much more about the individual and the family, and the kind of experience, unique often experience that person would want. And yeah, that's all I've got. So please, in the comments, let me know any differences, any things that you might do differently, any things that I've missed out or forgotten to mention. And I hope that you are all staying well and keeping safe. Ma'as salama.